From disaster to done. The East Texas Restoration Report. From disaster to done.
Okay, so I want you to imagine that it is just a perfectly normal Tuesday morning. You know, you have your coffee.
Right, the good coffee.
Yeah, exactly, the good coffee.
Yeah.
Your inbox is totally manageable for once. You were just completely in the zone.
Which is a rare feeling, but yeah, you were looking at a calendar full of just predictable meetings, routine decisions.
Right, and then out of nowhere, at exactly 10:14 a.m., the metaphorical floor just falls completely out from under you.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Like maybe it is a catastrophic failure in your global supply chain, or maybe a key executive just abruptly resigns and takes all your best clients with them.
Or it could be, a macroeconomic event that just completely flips your entire industry upside down in a matter of hours.
Exactly. The shockwave hits. And in that exact second, the only thing standing between you and absolute catastrophe is the unglamorous, totally invisible work that you did yesterday.
Yeah, that is the reality.
So welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking you on a mission to unpack the Season 12 conclusion of the Leadership Strategy series, The Ready Leader, Preparedness and Decision Strategy.
And if you've been following the source material, you know the authors have spent months dissecting all this complex strategic theory.
Oh yeah, tons of it. But this specific conclusion, it distills all of that down into a few really razor-sharp core themes.
It really does.
And today, we are zeroing in on one unapologetically provocative question that the text poses directly to the reader. And it is this: if it happened tomorrow, would you be ready?
And we really need to clarify what kind of source material we are dealing with here, right? Because this isn't, it's not a theoretical white paper on hypothetical management styles.
Definitely not.
This is a culmination text. The authors have just stripped away all the standard corporate jargon, all the comfortable illusions of control, and the abstract modeling.
Right. They are looking entirely at the raw, unfiltered mechanics of organizational and personal survival.
Exactly. They are looking at the specific architectures of response. So when the text asks, would you be ready? It isn't asking if you feel emotionally confident.
No, not at all.
It is asking for a literal, unsparing audit of your operational reality.
Which means the stakes for what we are unpacking today could not be higher. I mean, whether you are listening to this as someone leading a massive multinational corporate team.
Or you are a startup founder.
Yeah, or you are just trying to manage the really complex compounding variables of your own career trajectory,
Right.
The principles extracted from this source are positioned as the defining factor between a temporary operational setback and a total unrecoverable collapse.
It's that serious. But to get there, though, the text insists we have to start long before the 10:14 a.m. shockwave.
Right, way before. We have to look at the architecture of anticipation. Because before you can execute a physical response, there's a cognitive foundation that dictates whether that response will succeed or fail.
Yeah, the source highlights two very specific, distinct core themes right at the beginning, and those are risk awareness and a preparedness mindset.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the way the text positions these two concepts is crucial, right? They are so frequently conflated in leadership circles.
Oh, constantly. People just assume that if they are aware of a risk, they are prepared for it. But the authors systematically dismantle that assumption.
They really do.
You have to analyze the chronological and functional relationship between them to understand the argument. So risk awareness is categorized strictly as a diagnostic tool.
Like, it is the act of gathering intelligence.
Right. You are looking at market volatility data, or you are running stress tests on your software, you are reading geopolitical forecasts.
It is the intellectual identification of a vulnerability. You are essentially pointing at the horizon and saying, a storm could hit there.
Exactly. But let me stop you there, because the text gets very granular about how risk awareness is essentially just an observation. It's an input.
Yeah, you are just observing a data point. But a preparedness mindset, how does the source differentiate that from just being deeply, thoroughly aware?
So the source argues that the preparedness mindset is the psychological baseline that actually processes that input. It is the internalization of the data.
Okay, so risk awareness says things could go wrong.
Right. And the preparedness mindset is the deep structural acceptance that things will go wrong. It is a shift from passive observation to active psychological commitment.
I love that. So is risk awareness like looking at the weather forecast and seeing rain? while the preparedness mindset is the habit of always leaving an umbrella by the door.
That is a perfect analogy, yes. The text argues that the intellect alone, just knowing the rain is coming, or knowing a structural beam in a bridge, is stress that doesn't stop the bridge from collapsing.
No, obviously not.
The mindset is what dictates the structural behavior. It's automatically designing secondary load-bearing pathways before a crack even appears.
Wow. That distinction changes everything about how we evaluate leadership.
Yeah.
When you think about the corporate environment, we reward risk awareness constantly.
Oh, absolutely. We have entire departments dedicated to it.
Right. Risk management, compliance, analytics. Analysts get promoted for creating incredibly detailed heat maps and slide decks showing exactly where the vulnerabilities are.
Yeah, they do. But if we follow the logic of this text, a leader who only has risk awareness without the behavioral engine of a preparedness mindset is essentially just building a very expensive catalog of their own eventual demise.
That is such a brutal way to put it, but it's so true. And the text actually explores the psychological toll of that exact scenario, doesn't it?
It does. It says that if you possess high risk awareness but lack the preparedness mindset, you enter the state of systemic hypervigilance.
Ugh, that sounds exhausting.
It is. You are constantly identifying threats, seeing every market fluctuation as a potential disaster, noticing every flaw in your supply chain.
But because you haven't established the psychological baseline that you are actually capable of meeting those threats, you are trapped in a feedback loop of anxiety.
Exactly. You become a walking bottleneck of paranoia for your entire organization.
You are seeing every threat, but feeling fundamentally helpless to mitigate the chaos when it eventually arrives. The text implies that this imbalance is a primary driver of executive burnout.
Oh, for sure. You are absorbing all the threat data without any of the psychological agency to actually process it.
Which is exactly why the source insists that the preparedness mindset is the mandatory prerequisite for operational survival.
Right. The authors posit that cultivating this mindset actively transforms anxiety into agency.
Yes. When you accept the inevitability of the crisis, you stop wasting cognitive energy hoping it won't happen.
You move from a defensive crouch, waiting for the blow, into a proactive stance where you are actively managing future outcomes.
You are rewiring your baseline reaction from how do we prevent any disruption to how do we ensure we are the most capable entity in the room when the disruption inevitably occurs.
Exactly. And this psychological shift is the necessary soil. Without it, the physical tools we are about to discuss cannot take root.
Right, because if that psychological baseline is secure, the biological reality of the crisis still remains. Even if a leader has fully accepted that the disruption is coming, sitting calmly at a desk accepting reality doesn't physically reboot a server or reroute a shipping container.
No, it definitely doesn't.
So how does the text bridge the gap between a calm mental state and functional physical survival?
This is where the authors lay out what I view as a tactical triad. The source dictates 3 highly specific key concepts that must be generated prior to the event.
And those are emergency plans, contacts, and immediate actions.
Yes. This is where the source transitions from the theoretical to the intensely practical. And this triad is fascinating because of how deliberately the authors segment these 3 elements.
Okay, let's break down the categories as they're defined. First, you have emergency plans.
Right. The text describes this as your overarching architectural blueprint for chaos management. This is the comprehensive documentation.
It outlines long-term recovery phases, legal compliance requirements during a crisis, public relations strategies, all that stuff.
Yeah, and the macro-level organizational restructuring that might be necessary.
It's the proverbial heavy binder sitting on the shelf in the corner office. It has the table of contents, the flow charts, the deep operational guidelines.
Precisely. But then the authors do something very intentional. They do not bury the next 2 elements inside that binder.
No, they explicitly carve out contacts and immediate actions as distinct, standalone concepts, elevating them to the exact same level of importance as the overarching plan itself.
Yes. So contacts refers to the human infrastructure, knowing exactly which specific individuals have the authority and capability to execute critical interventions.
And immediate actions are defined as the tactical, first 5 minutes physical responses required to stop a cascading failure.
Exactly.
I've read this section multiple times, and I found myself initially pushing back on the author's logic.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Because it feels redundant to me. If a leadership team spends 6 months drafting a comprehensive 200-page emergency operations plan, wouldn't the immediate actions and the contact lists just be like chapter 1 of that plan?
You would think so, right?
Yeah. Why does the source insist on treating them as fundamentally different categories of readiness? Are they suggesting the plan itself is flawed?
Well, no, the authors aren't suggesting the plan is flawed at all. They are highlighting that human biology is flawed.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The text delves into the actual mechanics of a crisis response to explain this separation. When that 10:14 a.m. shockwave hits, the authors note that the organizational reality is instantly subordinated to the physiological reality of the people in the room.
Right.
This hinges entirely on the concept of cognitive load and the human stress response.
Basically, the fight or flight mechanism taking over.
Exactly. The text points out that in the presence of a sudden severe threat, your autonomic nervous system just floods your body with adrenaline and cortisol.
Yeah, and blood is routed away from the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for complex synthesis, reading comprehension, long-term planning.
And it's routed toward the amygdala and motor systems. Your working memory, which can typically hold maybe 7 pieces of information simultaneously, shrinks drastically.
So in those first critical minutes, your cognitive bandwidth essentially collapses into a tunnel vision state of survival.
That is exactly what happens.
So the authors are arguing that an emergency plan, no matter how perfectly written it is functionally useless in the first 5 minutes because the human brain is biologically incapable of synthesizing it under that level of chemical stress.
You literally cannot process a complex flowchart when your heart rate spikes to 130 beats per minute.
That makes so much sense. That is the exact mechanism they are isolating.
Right. The source separates immediate actions and contacts from the broad emergency plan because those two elements must bypass the prefrontal cortex entirely.
They have to be accessible when your brain is maxed out.
Yes. Immediate actions cannot require synthesis or decision trees. They must be muscle memory.
Yeah.
They must be binary protocols.
And contacts cannot require logging into an employee directory and searching for a department head.
Exactly. They must be instant, pre-verified lifelines. The text argues that the heavy binder is designed for hour 2 or day 2 when the initial cortisol spike has leveled off and the prefrontal cortex actually comes back online.
Wow. The immediate actions and contacts are what keep the organization alive long enough to even reach hour 2.
Yes. Let's ground this in a highly specific, everyday scenario to really illustrate how the text applies this.
Okay, I love a good scenario. Let's hear it.
Imagine you oversee the global data infrastructure for a financial institution. Your systems process millions of transactions an hour. Suddenly, the primary cooling systems in your central data facility fail, and the core servers begin to critically overheat.
Okay, so alarms are triggering across your dashboard. Absolute panic.
Right. In that exact second, the text is saying you do not open a PDF titled Site Outage Operations Manual.
Because your prefrontal cortex cannot process a 50-page document while you are watching millions of dollars evaporate.
Exactly. Instead, you rely on the separated triad. Your immediate action is to hit the physical failover switch to route traffic to the backup site in a different region.
Which requires zero synthesis. It is a predetermined reflex.
Right. Then you look at the laminated card taped to your monitor and dial the direct cell phone number of the lead network architect. That is your contact.
And you only crack open the PDF manual 3 hours later to begin the regulatory reporting process.
Yes. And the authors highlight that if a leader fails to separate those elements, if they just assume everything is in the plan, they lose the crisis in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, because if you have to search for the failover protocol on page 40 of a document, or if you have to waste cognitive load trying to remember if the network architect is on vacation this week, the servers literally melt.
The crisis cascades beyond recovery. The text separation of these concepts is a profound acknowledgement that true preparedness systems must be designed for the reality of human panic, not the theoretical ideal of human perfection.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. This brings us to a massive pivot in the source text. We've established the psychological baseline. We've secured the immediate physical survival using predetermined actions and contacts.
Right, the immediate reflex is over, the bleeding is momentarily stopped.
Exactly. Now, a leader has to actually steer the organization through the rest of the unfolding chaos. And the authors dedicate a major portion of this conclusion to the core theme of decision-making.
And they introduce a fascinating, highly counterintuitive dynamic here regarding how preparation interacts with spontaneous decision-making.
Oh, this part blew my mind.
Right. The prevailing corporate myth is that if you prepare perfectly, you basically script the entire crisis. The assumption is that True readiness means you won't have to make any decisions when disaster strikes. You just follow the sequence.
Right. You essentially become an algorithmic manager. You just execute if-then statements.
But the source categorically rejects that model. The authors argue that a crisis is, by its very definition, characterized by novel, unpredictable variables.
Because no emergency plan can account for every compounding factor.
Exactly. I mean, a localized power outage might simultaneously overlap with a targeted cyber attack, or a key supplier might go bankrupt on the exact same day a hurricane hits a major shipping lane.
There will always be a gap between the plan and reality, and that gap must be navigated by human decision-making in real time.
Yeah.
So, and this is the big question, if preparation doesn't eliminate the need to make decisions, what does the text argue it actually accomplishes? Like, why spend months preparing if you were still going to be forced to think on your feet?
Well, the authors introduce the concept of preserving decision-making bandwidth. True readiness doesn't eliminate decisions. It quarantines them.
Oh, I like that phrasing.
Yeah. By locking in the preparedness mindset, the immediate actions, and the contacts, you automate the predictable, routine elements of survival. You clear the mental clutter.
Right.
The text argues that human beings have a finite capacity for making high-quality decisions in a given time frame. It's like a cognitive battery, so to speak.
So when you prepare the basics, you ensure that your precious, limited decision-making capacity is entirely preserved and focused on the unique, unpredictable variables of the specific crisis.
Exactly, rather than being drained by the mechanics of basic survival.
Let's explore the inverse of that mechanism, because I think that reveals exactly why so many intelligent leaders fail spectacularly under pressure.
Oh, definitely. Let's look at that.
If we follow the source's logic, an unprepared leader isn't failing simply because they lack a specific blueprint. They are failing because they are forced to make an overwhelming volume of foundational decisions simultaneously.
Right. They're experiencing catastrophic decision fatigue within the first 60 minutes of a crisis.
That is the exact physiological bottleneck the authors are describing. Making a decision, any decision, no matter how small, consumes measurable metabolic resources in the brain.
Yes. So if you are that unprepared leader facing the data center failure we talked about, you are standing there in the dark, and you are burning your cognitive battery on micro decisions.
Like, should I call the facility manager or the IT lead? Wait, do I even have the IT lead's personal number? Should I email the executive team now or wait until I have more information? Where is the login for the backup system?
Exactly. You are making 50 micro decisions before you even attempt to address the core problem. You are draining your battery on the basics.
And by the time you need to make the macro decision, the really complex strategic choice about whether to shut down client portals and risk a public relations disaster just to save the mainframe, your cognitive capacity is entirely depleted.
You are running on empty, and the text argues that is exactly when catastrophic judgment errors occur.
Wow. And what's fascinating is how the authors contrast this with the prepared leader. Because the prepared leader pre-decided all those micro decisions 3 months ago during a calm afternoon. Their cognitive battery is fully charged when the shockwave hits.
Yeah, the text illustrates how this pre-decision process completely alters the trajectory of a leader's response. When your baseline is secure, you aren't just reacting faster. Your entire analytical framework shifts.
You gain the ability to step back from the tactical panic and elevate your perspective to the strategic level.
Yes, you stop playing defense and you start looking for the strategic pivot.
Precisely. The authors note that when a leader isn't spending their mental RAM panicking about who to call or where the manual is, they can look at the novel variables of the crisis and synthesize a creative solution.
They can look at the disruption and ask, since our primary distribution network is down, how can we leverage this mandatory pause to aggressively test that experimental localized delivery model we've been sitting on?
Right. The text posits that prepared leaders are the only ones capable of finding strategic advantage inside a crisis, because they are the only ones with the available cognitive bandwidth to actually look for it.
It is the difference between treading water just to keep your head up versus having a life raft that allows you to actually navigate the current.
That is a great way to look at it. And all of these mechanisms, the transition from awareness to mindset, the deployment of the tactical triad to bypass biological panic, the aggressive preservation of decision-making bandwidth, it all funnels down into one ultimate tangible result.
Yes, it does.
The source delivers a primary insight that really anchors the entire season's philosophy, and it is incredibly stark. The text states, prepared leaders recover faster.
We need to dissect the specific vocabulary the authors use here because what they deliberately choose to omit from that insight is arguably more revealing than what they actually include.
Oh, absolutely. They do not say prepared leaders prevent disasters.
Yeah, no, they don't. And they do not say prepared leaders maintain perfect continuity.
Think about the implications of that for you listening. The authors of a massive comprehensive series on leadership and strategy fundamentally refuse to promise that their methods will prevent a crisis.
Right. Why is that?
Well, I would argue that the text is forcing the reader to swallow a deeply uncomfortable, humbling truth about the limitations of executive control. The source is acknowledging that the world is fundamentally chaotic.
Yeah, some crises are entirely inevitable. You cannot model your way out of a global pandemic. You cannot prepare your way out of a completely unforeseen macroeconomic collapse.
And you cannot build a firewall thick enough to stop every single zero-day exploit.
You just can't. The text argues that the hubris of believing you can build a perfect, impenetrable fortress, this obsession with absolute prevention is actually a vulnerability.
Because when the walls inevitably breach, a leader obsessed with prevention is completely paralyzed by the failure of their paradigm.
Exactly. The authors frame this as a necessary evolutionary shift in leadership philosophy. It's the transition from prioritizing invulnerability to prioritizing resilience.
Because invulnerability is an illusion. It is a static, rigid defense that eventually shatters.
Right. But resilience is dynamic. It is the capacity to absorb a kinetic impact, deform without breaking, and return to an operational state.
The text deliberately abandons the language of prevention and focuses exclusively on recovery and speed, because those are the only metrics a leader can actually control.
Let's construct a scenario that really drives home why the authors focus on recovery speed as the ultimate metric.
Okay, let's do it.
Imagine two rival entities, Company A and Company B. They operate in the same sector. They have identical market share, identical resources, and highly competent executive teams.
Okay, totally evenly matched.
Right. Tomorrow, a completely unprecedented zero-day vulnerability in a core software they both use is exploited globally. It is unavoidable. Both companies suffer a catastrophic data breach, and their operational systems go completely dark.
Wow, okay, so the exact same storm hits both houses. Neither could have prevented it.
Exactly. The text would analyze this scenario not by looking at the impact, but by tracking the timeline of the response.
Right, so let's say Company A has internalized the source's teachings. They have a preparedness mindset.
When the systems go dark, their immediate actions are executed via muscle memory. They instantly sever external network connections to quarantine the breach.
Their contacts are engaged. The incident response team is online within 4 minutes.
Because they aren't bogged down in micro-decisions, their leadership team preserves their cognitive bandwidth to focus entirely on the novel variables of the specific malware.
And consequently, Company A restores their core systems from offline, immutable backups, and resumes critical operations in 12 hours.
That's Company A. Meanwhile, Company B lacked the physical triad and the psychological baseline.
Right. When the screens go black, they spend the first 3 hours locked in a conference room arguing about who officially holds the authority to shut down the external network.
Oh, man. They suffer massive decision fatigue just trying to locate their disaster recovery vendors' weekend contact information.
And the executive team is so exhausted by the tactical chaos that they cannot strategize a cohesive public relations response.
As a result of all this compounding friction, it takes Company B 12 days to fully restore operations.
And the authors make the brutal mathematical point here. They both suffered the exact same disaster. They both took the exact same punch.
But the economic and reputational gap between a 12-hour outage and a 12-day outage isn't just a matter of lost revenue. In the modern economy, it is an existential chasm.
Yeah. Company A didn't just survive. They captured market share from Company B while Company B was offline.
The text argues that Company A wins the market precisely because their recovery speed was exponential. Recovery speed isn't just a metric of readiness. It is the ultimate, undeniable scorecard of leadership effectiveness when the illusion of control is stripped away.
Which perfectly sets up the crescendo of this entire deep dive.
It really does.
We've unpacked the psychological mechanics, we've examined the physiological limits of decision-making, and we've established recovery speed as the definitive metric. But to close out this culmination text, the authors deliver two final definitive statements.
And these are categorized in the source as authority quotes. They are designed to cement the entire philosophical ethos of everything we've been analyzing.
Right, and the quotes are, readiness changes outcomes, and preparation is leadership.
It is so vital that we parse these two statements independently, because the authors are using them to accomplish two very different things.
Okay, let's look at the first one.
The first statement, readiness changes outcomes, is positioned as a statement of objective, verifiable reality. It is the physics of the situation.
Right. It argues that the future is not a fixed deterministic point.
Yes. The outcome of a crisis is deeply malleable, and it is directly proportionally shaped by the structural preparations implemented in the present.
If you implement the tactical triad, the outcome shifts from a 12-day collapse to a 12-hour disruption. That isn't an opinion. The text presents that as an observable historical fact.
It's the mathematical proof of the entire series.
Exactly. But the second quote, preparation is leadership, operates on an entirely different plane.
Yeah, that is not a mathematical equation. That is a profound, uncompromising philosophical stance taken by the authors.
Notice the syntax, too. The text does not say preparation is a component of leadership. It doesn't say preparation is a best practice for leaders.
No, it equates the two entirely. It makes them synonymous.
So what does this all mean? I want to really dig into the implications of that statement because I think the authors are making a highly controversial argument here.
Oh, they definitely are.
The text is essentially launching a direct attack on the prevailing cultural archetype of what a leader is. I mean, think about how modern corporate culture defines leadership.
We idolize the visionary.
Yes, the charismatic orator. The disruptor who stands on a stage in a black turtleneck paints a breathtaking picture of the future and inspires thousands of people to follow them into uncharted territory.
Right. We reward the ability to project confidence and generate momentum.
But if the authors are stating categorically that preparation is leadership, are they implying that a highly charismatic, deeply visionary individual who successfully inspires a team but fundamentally fails to build the unglamorous structural preparations required to protect that team isn't actually a leader at all? Like, is the text calling them an imposter?
The source material strongly supports that interpretation. The authors are systematically dismantling the cult of the visionary.
Wow.
The text argues that vision without preparation is not leadership. It is fundamentally irresponsible. It is organizational daydreaming.
Oh, that is a great phrase. Organizational daydreaming.
Right. The argument is that the ability to inspire people is a tool, it's a mechanism for alignment, but it is not the substance of leadership itself.
So the authors are arguing that if you convince your entire company to follow you up a treacherous mountain because you've painted a beautiful picture of the summit, but you didn't bother to check the meteorological data, you didn't secure the supply lines, and you have no immediate actions defined for a sudden blizzard,
Then you are not leading them. You are actively endangering them. The charisma was just the lure.
that is the exact philosophical bedrock of the text.
It really is. The authors define leadership not by the privilege of standing at the front and pointing toward the horizon, but by the heavy, often invisible burden of ensuring that the people who trust your vision can actually survive the journey.
It strips away all the ego, all the stagecraft, and all the performative aspects of the title. What remains is a strict, unyielding responsibility.
The text posits that if you are not diligently, obsessively preparing the structures of recovery, you are not protecting your organization. And if you are not protecting your organization, regardless of your title or your charisma, you are not leading.
That reframing is incredibly potent. It demands a total reevaluation of how we measure executive competence.
It really does.
Well, we've covered immense ground today, unpacking the densest core themes from this source text. Let's trace the arc of the argument one more time.
Yeah, let's summarize.
The text demanded we start by recognizing the toxic nature of mere risk awareness, proving that without the active psychological foundation of a preparedness mindset, we are just generating paralyzing anxiety.
Right. We then examine the biological reality of the 10.14 a.m. shockwave, understanding why a human brain flooded with cortisol requires the separation of immediate actions and contacts from the broader, heavier emergency plans.
Then we explored the paradox of preparation, how locking in the basic mechanics is the only way to preserve the cognitive battery required to make high-level decisions against novel variables.
We stripped away the hubris of invulnerability, accepting that the truest measure of readiness is simply how fast you recover from the inevitable impact.
And finally, we confronted the text's ultimate philosophical gauntlet, the assertion that preparation is not merely a task on a leader's checklist, but the very essence of the leadership mandate itself.
As we conclude this deep dive, the text leaves us with one final avenue to explore, and I want to pose this directly to you listening.
Oh, absolutely.
We have unpacked the mechanics, the biology, and the philosophy of the source material. We understand that recovery speed is the metric, and that preparation is synonymous with leadership. But, theoretical understanding is meaningless without practical application.
Totally.
I want you to revisit that 10.114 AM shockwave we established at the beginning. If a completely unmitigated crisis struck your primary area of responsibility tomorrow morning, whether that is a global department, a small business, or a critical personal project, would your current literal level of structural preparation validate the title you hold?
Oh, that is a heavy question.
It is. Or would the sudden, intense stress test of a crisis expose a terrifying gap between your perceived leadership and your operational reality? Don't abstract this by thinking about a massive 50-page plan. Focus on the tactical triad the text prioritizes.
Yeah.
Ask yourself right now, what is the single most critical immediate action? That one vital, non-negotiable fail-safe that you have been putting off defining because you assume you'll be able to figure it out in the moment.
That is exactly the uncomfortable, necessary question the source text demands you answer. It's the question that should occupy your thoughts tonight, so that when the 10:14 a.m. shockwave eventually arrives, your response is defined by agency rather than panic. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the mechanics of readiness. Take that final question, conduct a ruthless audit of your own architecture of anticipation, and we will see you next time.